Welcome to a podcast about Hilton Head Island and the Low Country. I am your host, Jay McCain. Today's episode is part 2 of a 3-part series with island entertainment legend Gregg Russell. We'll talk about his family, changes to the island over the years, and one of Gregg's biggest passions, the Hilton Head Heroes Foundation, as we travel down 278 to Lighthouse Road. Gregg, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
You started playing in Harbortown in 1976. At what point did Hilton Head become your home?
I never left. I got here the first day, and it's either been my primary residence or for 5 or 7 years early in my marriage, we owned a home in Nashville because I was doing some TV stuff, and my writing partners were there and publisher, and I commuted back and forth. But it's been home since the mid 70s.
Tell me a little bit about your family. You have a wife, Lindy, and is it 2 girls? Is that correct?
2 daughters. They're in their late 20s now. One married and one soon to be. Youngest daughter lives between New York and Los Angeles. She and her fiance, he's a Wall Street lawyer type, and they commute back and forth. And my older daughter was an equestrian, rode horses here, starting at Lawton Stables, and eventually in college won the NCAA national championships and trained dolphins for SeaWorld, and was very active in the animal world, let's say. And she and her husband, he's God forbid, a musician and a great golfer. With COVID, they last 2 years have been traveling all over the country in a big, exaggerated, oversized van, and they go to all the national parks, and they're hikers. They hiked over 1,000 miles last year. So both daughters very successful, and successful in that they're both very happy and living lives of wonder, which I think is just fantastic.
I bet it was quite entertaining to grow up as Gregg Russell's daughter. were you running material by him all the time? When you sang him to sleep at night, did you break the guitar out?
No, my youngest daughter, she's well trained as an actor, and she models and was in all the plays you could ever imagine, and musicals and whatnot. And I knew at 4 years old, she came downstairs one morning, and whenever I was home and not on the road, I would always fix them breakfast and take them both to school. And she's 4 years old, and she comes down the stairs, and she looks at me, and she does one of those actor moves, and she says, "Dad, I couldn't possibly go to school today." And I said, "Why not?" She said, "Look at my hair." She's having a bad hair day at 4 years old, and so she can't go to school? Are you kidding me? At our house, unless you were bleeding profusely out of an open wound, you were going to school.
That's great.
So yeah, they would come to Harbortown and see what I do, and afterwards, it takes me a little while to sign books and T-shirts and CDs and all of that, and they never quite understood the concept of, well, what are you doing? Why are you writing your name on other people's stuff? They've always thought I was goofy, and I guess that's a great compliment.
I think every child thinks their parents are a little crazy, especially the dads. It's something you touch on in your shows all the time, is that how crazy the dads are.
Yeah, but I hear all my contemporaries, all my buddies talk about the tough time they had with their sons and daughters and teenage years and all that, and we just sailed through. I mean, we just had no problems with our kids. They were well behaved, and the ultimate compliment comes back when they're around other adults, and the adults come back and say, your children are so well behaved and respectful. That to me is the ultimate compliment. And I was gone so much. Their mom, Lindy, is such a wonderful role model and was to them, and she did a fantastic job a good portion of the time raising them and taking care of them when I was on the road. Now, there came a point in time, you remember Payne Stewart, the golfer. Payne and I were fairly close as I got close to many of the golfers who came here because of their kids. And Payne and I were fairly close, and he and I spent some time together. And I was actually on a cruise ship, and there was a knock on my cabin door. Nobody ever knocked on my cabin door. And a guy said, "There's a phone call for you on the bridge." This was pre-cell phone and call from your cabin kind of stuff. And I thought, oh no, this is not good. So I went up to the bridge, and it was my wife, and she was telling me, "Have you heard about Payne?" And I said, "No, I'm out in the middle of the ocean somewhere." And she told me about the plane crash and what had happened. So the next day or 2 days later, I flew back into Miami, and I finally got to a payphone, and I called her, and I said, I've thought about this, and I'm done. She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm not going to do this anymore." Payne and I swapped war stories about being gone all the time, and missing dance recitals, and all those things that most parents take for granted and or dread. And so almost immediately we took our girls out of school and we homeschooled them. And for 2 years, wherever I went, we all went, because I was contractually obligated. And it wasn't tough duty. I mean, we'd go to Hawaii for 2 months, or go to the ski resorts, or we get on cruise ships, or wherever I was going. And so it was really the first time for me to connect with them on that 24-hour-a-day level, like Lindy had been with them since the very beginning. And after the end of 2 years, we decided, all right, we need to get them off the road and back into social lives. And the one daughter, the youngest, Maddie, was acting and wanting to pursue all that. And Mackenzie was riding and wanted to ride horses. So we got back home, and I decided that was it for me, that I would greatly, greatly curtail my travel schedule. And I did, and never really looked back.
I remember when that happened, and I didn't have the opportunity to know Payne Stewart, but just from watching him on the golf course and how he interacted with people, you knew that not only did the golf world suffer a tremendous loss, but so did the world. What was Payne like? Can you share some stories?
He was a character. I mean, he loved music. That was one of our connections. He couldn't sing very well at all, and he always had a harmonica with him wherever he went. So during golf week, you could go to the quarterdeck and hear him sitting in with guys that were playing, and it was somewhat of a train wreck. But he and Peter Jacobson, a couple other guys, had a little PGA rock and roll band called Jake Trout and the Flounders, I think. And they'd play at all the PGA events everywhere, and it was just kind of a fun thing. But Payne was a character. Paul Azinger, who was his best friend on tour, and Zinger and I are still to this day good friends. Payne invited Zinger over to his house because he wanted to show him. Payne had bought a brand new bass boat with this great big engine on it, and he lived on outside of Orlando and Lake Isleworth. And so Zinger pulls up in the driveway, and Payne is inside his garage, standing up in his bass boat, and he says, "Listen to this, Zinger." And he cranked the engine. And Zinger, who's an experienced world-class fisherman, is running and yelling at Payne, "Shut it off, shut it off." And Payne is revving the engine up, and the whole thing is catching on fire. You got to have water running through the engine
for cooling
to keep it cool. That was Payne. Everything he did was wide open, and he loved his kids, and he spent as much time as he could with them. But here he is, a world-class, well-known athlete, traveling all over the world, and we shared that. We had that in common of missing our kids. And a year after he was gone, our family and Paul Azinger's family went over to Defusky the week after the golf tournament, and we sat out on a deck one night out on the balcony of one of those cottages over there. And Zinger talked about how much he missed Payne. And he said, "What I've come to realize is I don't want or care if people remember me for pitching in out of the sand trap and winning the PGA championship." Yeah, he said, "I don't care about any of that." He said, "When I'm gone, I want to be missed." and Payne is missed by the golf world and the friends that he had everywhere. So I think that's a good life lesson for us all. Are we going to be missed when we're gone? I hope so.
Tell me about your wife, Lindy, and where you met. Was she one of the girls you were playing to on the beach, or how'd you meet Lindy?
For many years I owned let's call it a club out in Keystone at the Keystone Resort in Colorado, a ski resort. And it was an over-exaggerated pizza place with seated a couple hundred people. And an ex-Sea Pines guy was running the resort at the time, and this place was floundering a little bit, and he asked me if I'd like to get involved with it because I'd built up a reputation in the ski resort. So we took it over, and I would come in and play early in the evening, from like 6 till 9 o'clock, and then a rock and roll band would come on and play until 2 in the morning, and we're selling these huge $50 pizzas, and so anyway, that was we owned that for about 7 years. Well, Lindy and her 2 sisters were flight attendants. Lindy at Delta, and her sisters were with American. And whenever these flight attendants were in town, there was kind of a buzz about these 3. All beautiful, just ski fanatics. And anyway, I would sneak them in the back door of the Last Chance Saloon, which I owned, because it was an hour and a half wait to get in every night. So I'd sneak them in the back door and have a table for them, and actually became good friends with her older sister, who was dating a musician friend of mine. So we would ski a little bit and hang out a little bit. And so they had that place, but they also owned a place in Miami where they were based. And so 2 of the sisters lived together in Miami. So I was working cruise ships, and I told Lindy's older sister, I said, look, a few weeks I'm going to be in Miami, and I have a layover before I join a ship. Maybe we'll have dinner or something. She said, yeah, call me. Because we were just friends. And so I flew into Miami, and I called the only number I had, and she wasn't there, but Lindy answered the phone. I said, Gregg Russell, you remember I met you out in Colorado? Oh, yeah, I remember you. And I said, well, I was calling Debbie to see if she wanted to have dinner or something tonight. And she said, well, Debbie's on a trip. She's flying on a trip. She said, and I'm supposed to go to some black tie thing tonight, and I'm tired. I just flew in, and I don't want to do that. But if you let me come in jeans and a sweatshirt, I'll come by and pick you up, and we'll go have stone crabs or something somewhere. So I said, great. So she came to the hotel at the Sheraton there at the Miami airport. I'll never forget it. Picked me up, and we went to dinner, and we've been together ever since.
You and Lindy and the girls, now you travel together. Did you have a favorite place that you live in paradise? Do you have a favorite place that you would actually go on vacation?
Yeah. Lindy's sister owns and has for 30 years or so a beautiful place down in the Bahamas. Very small island called Green Turtle. And so they invited us and our girls down there, and we kind of fell in love with the place. It's very difficult to get to, but once you get there, it's crystal clear blue water and no footprints on the beaches anywhere. And we became friendly with other people down there some people from California basically have always made their little house available to us whenever we wanted to go. So we were just down there last month. Lindy and I went, but our girls grew up almost every vacation going to Green Turtle in the Abacos. People ask me if I have any regrets about being here. I never had a summer vacation with my girls because I was here 6 nights a week. But every Christmas and New Year's and spring break, when possible, we would head for the Bahamas. So yeah, that's was back then and still our favorite place. Now I still love river cruises through Europe and Hawaii and all the wonderful places we've been blessed to be able to go to all these years. But memories of our girls growing up and have pictures of them from the time they're 3 or 4 years old till present day, walking the beaches and fishing and swimming and diving and doing all that Bahamian stuff, that outweighs everywhere else.
Back here in Hilton Head, how did the island change throughout the 80s and the 90s?
Well, with the expansion of more and more visitors discovering us, there are more restaurants, more grocery stores. 278 became 4-lane, and then traffic lights, and all of that stuff. But I've always been of the mindset that aren't we lucky that so many people from Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and Indianapolis want to come after working hard all year and want to spend a week or two here. Aren't we lucky that this is the place they choose to come? So it's changed in the number of visitors and the number of residents and the number of everything that we have here. But as we've said before, I think it's been so well managed that the island has been able to absorb all of that growth in a way that has kept the characteristics and the dignity and the vision that Charles Fraser had for this place 60 years ago. For the most part, it's still intact. Now, all of us that live here get a little frustrated when there's a backup of cars at the traffic circle. But, for the great majority of the year, it's a nice, quiet little hometown, if you will.
How did Sea Pines change in the 80s and 90s? They went through, some ownership issues and, some turmoil, still ended up being a fantastic place. But what were the changes like over those years?
Well, we have been through, 6 or 7 owners since I've been there, and some were not as tuned in to the original vision as others. But about 10 years or so ago, we were lucky enough because the property owners had, a group of property owners had brought it out of bankruptcy and just somehow been able to move it along and keep it alive and breathing when our current owners stepped in and purchased the assets and the resort side of Sea Pines and have put tens of millions, if not 100 million or more, into the structures and infrastructure of Sea Pines. And that growth and that influx of cash has carried over to Palmetto Dunes and stabilized the real estate market. And we're more vibrant right now, really, than any time in my 45-year history that we're here, that I've been here. We're more stable. Real estate prices are through the roof. If you're a seller right now, you want to sell your home or your villa, you're fat and happy. If you're trying to buy something right now, it's pickings are slim. Our inventory, from what I understand, is down 70% of what it was a year ago. So people want to be here. There is a magic potion that is Hilton Head, all of Hilton Head, not just Sea Pines, but all of Hilton Head, and that attracts the best of the best. And people come here and want to assimilate and be a part of this community. And, it's never been better, in my humble opinion.
It's quite a beach club they built down there.
Whew. Well, the beach club, the plantation club, the Harbortown Clubhouse, right now they're in the final days before they're tearing down the whole quarterdeck end of the Harbortown Peninsula there by the lighthouse to rebuild it in a way that takes more advantage of all of those fantastic views. And that's due to our ownership. They believe in the resort, and people have caught that fever, if you will, that there are solid, stable owners there that are putting their money where their mouth is, and they're spending to really recreate the glory days of Sea Pines. And you drive through there right now, and you're amazed at the growth, and some of the old 60-year-old small beach cottages that existed way back then, are being torn down and replaced by newer, more family-friendly homes. And I can't tell you how grateful all of us are for what the ownership at Sea Pines has done, and the trickle effect of what it's done everywhere else. It's solid. We're stable. And if another recession comes, another 07, 08 comes, I think we'll be able to handle it better than most.
When I was just down at Harbortown a few days ago, there's a lot of construction going on for the whole quarterdeck project and all that, but I walked out on the pier, and there's actually, for the longest time, the only building that had any color in it whatsoever, because everything is painted neutral because of all the rules, was the lighthouse. It's got red and white stripes. But now they've got some buildings down there. It looks like somebody snuck in from the Bahamas and or Miami and started painting. What are your thoughts on some of the changes to kind of brighten up the Harbortown area?
Well, the Sea Pines has a fairly restrictive ARB that controls, what colors you can paint your house, and all of those covenant restrictions that exist that they enforce. And so there's some pushback right now. People think that those colors are a little outlandish and a little bit too much, and probably on some of the colors I agree with that. But 2 winters ago, we were over in Portofino in Italy, and Charles really designed Harbortown to look like Portofino, and they have those more muted colors of browns and orange and, I won't say yellow, but mustard kind of colors on those 300-400-year-old villas in Portofino. So I'd rather see that kind of more muted colors, and I think they'll get to that. I think, I've been remodeling houses and buying and selling houses, and sometimes you pick out a color and it looks a little different on the wall than it did at Home Depot or Sherwin-Williams. So I don't know. It's caused a lot of controversy, and with all the things we have to really be worried about in the world, that probably not hit my radar as hard as some of the other issues. But I'm sure in the end it'll work out, and that it'll be to most people's satisfaction.
Change is hard sometimes.
Yes.
But with everything that Sea Pines has done over the years, usually they've been right.
Yes.
And some of the colors may end up changing or whatever, but I have a feeling, like you said, in the end of this, it'll all get right. What do you think the best improvement has been over the years for the island?
Wow, our infrastructure here. You don't really think about fire departments and police and hospital and all of that, but we have great health facilities here. I think we have 9 fire stations, if you will. They're building a brand new fire station in Sea Pines right now. That kind of infrastructure stuff is very important, and we take it for granted. I mean, within 10 minutes of me pulling out of my driveway, I can be at my bank, my grocery store, the beach, a softball field, a park to walk the dog, a nice dog park. Anything and everything within 10 minutes of my house is available to me. And you try that in Cleveland or Atlanta or Charlotte, you're hard pressed to get out of your subdivision in 10 minutes. So I think the way it's been done and the restrictions on development, although we had to have development in order to keep up with the demand, I think the way it's been done and developed is probably the best thing that's happened here.
The one thing that really struck me over the years was when they built the Cross Island Parkway, which I'm sure was a big challenge because all the environmental concerns and all that, and the land and getting through that whole issue. But nothing else really seemed to change the island as much as that road, because it pulled a lot of traffic off of the business section of 278 and kind of alleviated some of that pressure that was there. One thing a lot of people won't necessarily know is that the tolls are actually ending this year.
In July, yes.
Talk a little bit, and this is July 2021 for those who might be listening down the road. Tell me what you think the impact of the Cross Island Parkway had, and the fact that now it's actually going to be free to use, and the South Carolina Department of Transportation's going to take care of it.
Well, as you know, the bridge across Broad Creek, as part of the Cross Island, is the Charles Fraser Bridge. And I was with him the day that they opened it, and we pushed baby strollers up the bridge and with our girls, and Charles was there, and he had a vision for that years and years and years before that was built. But the red tape and the pushback, and you can't do it responsibly, and all the naysayers who didn't want bike paths, well, you can imagine they sure didn't want that Cross Island. But I guarantee you, they were the first people in line to use it to access the south end without having to drive all the way, around by Port Royal and Palmetto Dunes to get to the south end. I owned a home at that time in Spanish Wells, and for me to drive to Harbortown, was all the way around to get to Harbortown. It'd take, half an hour or so. And with the Cross Island, it was just a quick jump over Broad Creek, and there we were on the south end. So that was a great achievement that the town fathers finally got that push through. And they said back then, not sure everybody believed them, but at some point when it paid for itself, they would remove all the tolls, and there you go. Well, here we are a few months away, and they're going to take the toll booths down, and the road will be there for everyone to use.
We are recording this in March of 2021, and Hilton Head is actually in the midst of a whole new bridges project. Some of the bridges that you use to get on the island are really aging. I believe one of them is one of the original ones from 1956. You talk a little bit about that bridges project and what's going on with that and what your thoughts are on it?
Well, I've only seen some drawings and heard some conversation about it, but they're talking about, with South Carolina Department of Transportation, of either building something new, building new bridge or bridges, and taking the old bridges and turning them into parks. My youngest daughter, they have a place in Manhattan, and close to her place in Chelsea is the High Line, which was old train tracks, if you will, elevated train tracks, which rather than tear them down, they have turned that into a walking trail with trees, and it's a wonderful elevated space through a very, very busy section of Manhattan where you can walk and sit on a bench and catch the sunshine. And if they do what they're talking about doing and turning the older bridges, if you will, into a park where there's trees and you could fish or ride your bike or go have a picnic and have gatherings, I think that's a great idea.
It's a very unique use. Of old bridges. I believe down in Tampa in the Florida area, they have a real long bridge that's used it's basically a giant fishing pier now. So yeah, definitely a great way to revitalize.
Yeah.
I guess the only other option would be just to drop it in the water and allow it to become, kind of a fish sanctuary.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure the water is deep enough there for them to just drop it. I think they'd have to extract it, which could be very, very costly.
Gregg, one of your biggest passions is the Hilton Head Heroes Foundation and the Heroes House. What is that, and how did it become to be?
Well, over 20 years ago, when I was on the road a good portion of the time, I got so tired of just sitting in a hotel room waiting for a performance that night at a theater or a convention or wherever I happened to be. So I started visiting children's hospitals. I had done some work with organizations like Make-A-Wish and Ronald McDonald Houses and things like that. And I saw firsthand, up close, kids that were struggling and parents and families. And I came home one day and I said to my wife, I just did this thing for Make-A-Wish. I wonder if we could offer something like Make-A-Wish does. Not everybody wants to go to Disney World or, whatever the Make-A-Wish things are. Maybe we could get people to contribute their villa for a week, and, I can get a couple of restaurants to pitch in and that sort of thing. And she said, yeah, let's go for it. So we decided that we would call it Hilton Head Heroes. And so we asked for donations, and I went and asked my relationships here, would they help us this way and that way? And I met a little fella up in Augusta, Georgia, and at a hospital up there, and he had seen the golf tournament on TV, and he told me, he said, I would really love to be able to come to Hilton Head someday. And so when we decided to start it, I was in contact with his mom, and we invited them, if they could break away in between treatments, that they could, as a family, come down and spend a week here. And so they did. And they were our first family over 20 plus years ago. And isn't it funny that, 18 years later, during the golf tournament, I was walking around the golf course, and the pollen was out like it is now, and a big gust of wind blew all that yellow pollen out of the tree, and there was a marshal standing over by the green, and there weren't many people around this particular green. And I kind of said to him, he's probably 20 yards away, I said to him, wow, you would have thought the pollen would be gone by now or something like that. And he kind of motioned me over. He said, you don't know me, do you? And I said, help me out. I don't remember. And he introduced himself, and he was the father of that first little boy that we ever invited to come down here. And he had kept up with us and followed us. And it just so happened that particular night, I was having a function at a private home to thank many of our Hilton Head Heroes supporters for their contributions and whatnot. So I invited this gentleman, Mr. Womble, to come to this private home and tell his story of his little boy who left a legacy behind him of now over 1,000 families have come to Hilton Head for a cost-free week. And all of those families had one thing in common. They have a very, very sick child. And that gentleman related their story, their family story, to our contributors. And I think it had as much an impact on those sponsors that we have, where they saw 20 years later how much it still meant to that family, even though their son had passed away, that it left indelible impact on their entire family, that it gave them some good memories at the end of a very medically challenged life for their child.
That's an amazing impact on a lot of folks here on the island, hasn't it?
Well, it has. It takes so many people to make it work. After, I don't know, 7 or 8 years of asking and begging people for villas and homes and whatnot, we were able to purchase the Hilton Head Hero House in Sea Pines. It's a big house. It's got a pool in the backyard. And every week a different family comes and checks into that house, and we have a local family meet them, and they're our host family for that particular family. And when they arrive, we show them through the house and give them a great big book with gift certificates for restaurants and putt-putt golf and dolphin cruises and movie theater tickets and everything you could humanly want to do. And there's brand new bicycles sitting in the driveway delivered by the bicycle company. And we give them, groceries and everything that you would want on a vacation. Now, these aren't people who could ever afford to do this on their own. They've run out of insurance money. Your insurance has a cap on it, and when you have a sick child going through chemo and transplants and all the rest of it, you run through that pretty quickly. So, like I say, after all these years, we've had close to 1,000 families come and spend a week here, and many of these families come knowing that they're saying goodbye to one of their little ones. But they have the beach. We have a professional beach photographers come and take them on the beach and take their pictures. And in many cases, that's the last time that family is together as that unit.
Wow. I know that Lindy is very active and involved in this. What's it mean to you and Lindy every time a new family comes to stay in that house?
Well, over the 20 years, Lindy is the executive director, and she really makes it happen. We have a very, very strong board of directors who are all actively involved in one way or another, not just writing checks, but giving of their time and resources and energies. And there are days where I'll come home and she has just gotten off the phone with a mom or a dad, and a child has taken a turn for the worse, and they're worried about, are they going to be able to come or not come? And I can see that. I don't think you ever get immune to it. Dealing, a mom told me one time, coming to Harbortown, they bring the kids out to visit with me, and I asked a mom, because I watch what Lindy goes through with dealing with the different parents. I said, how do you do this? And this mom said, we have no choice. She said, every day there's a wolf knocking at our door. And we either choose to fight that wolf or we roll over, and we're not going to roll over. We're going to do everything we can, medically and spiritually and support-wise, that we can to give our child the best life they can have, however long or short that is.
And with that, we're going to wrap up part 2 with Gregg Russell. Gregg, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
In part 3 of this series with Gregg Russell, we'll talk about the state of Ohio, sandwiches, and whether or not Gregg actually ever owned a minivan. Gregg has some great family-friendly movies, CDs, and even a couple of books available on his website, greggrussell.com. That's 2 G's. I encourage you to check those out. As we were just discussing there, the Hilton Head Heroes Foundation is just an awesome group of people helping families when they are hurting just the most anybody could possibly be hurting. Please visit HHHEROES.com, HiltonHeadHeroes.com, and find out more about the organization, what they have done, and see some of the families they have helped. Please visit HHHeroes.com and support this wonderful effort. We have an entire episode about the Hilton Head Heroes, the house, and some stories about the families that have had the opportunity to come and visit Hilton Head. I can think of no better way to send you down 278 to Lighthouse Road with one of my favorite songs that Gregg performs, and it also shares the same name as the movie Gregg stars in. Here is Come Away Home.
Come away home
and come away home with me, where the wind whispers that children can be what they want to be. And oh, Carolina, there's nothing much finer than you gently calling to me. Come away home, Hilton Head's calling you home. Harbour Town's waiting, come home. Dolphins are playing, come home. Seagulls saying, come home. Come home, come away home. Come away home with me. When the light shines from the lighthouse, it beckons me to the sea. But oh, Carolina, there's nothing much finer than you gently calling to